Welcome to Tell the Damn Story, the show that explores the many ways to navigate the successes and failures that aspiring and struggling writers face to make your journey that much easier.
Hey, Alex Simmons. We got ourselves a show today. Chris Ryan, Alex Simmons, Tell the Damn Story. And Alex, I'm going to skip all the hey, how are yous and just
I'm good
free
with
you
that.
up to get to the show because
Yes.
we got ourselves a lot of show today.
We show do.
What we got, Alex? What do we got?
What we got? We got one of the founding fathers has returned once again from one of his great tours of the galaxy. Tim Fielder in the house. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Hey, how's it going, guys? How's it going?
Welcome home.
And let me say that one more time. And he's brought with him Mr. Walter Greason. Yes.
Woohoo!
Oh, okay, I don't have to go that far.
Greason, man. Grayson.
Grayson, that's what I said. Walter Grayson. You heard me say great. I get to fix that in the edit anyway. So anyway, no. Walter, welcome.
Thank you. Joy to be here.
Yes. And by the way, folks, I want you to understand we spared no expense. Chris is in New Jersey. I don't know where the heck Tim is. He's always somewhere.
I'm in New York.
He's in New York. Okay, so Tim and I are in New York, and Walter is out there in Minnesota.
Yes, St.
Yeah,
Paul.
Minnesota. See, so
St. Paul.
transatlantic experience here. No, not really, but it's good. It's good to see you. Good
Everybody's east of the Mississippi.
Oh, God.
Sometimes east.
Not quite.
So there's always a 1,001 things that we can talk about when you have this kind of talent on the mic. But we did say that initially we would focus on a particular project that both Walter and Tim have proudly produced and have been speaking about around the country, both via Zoom and also personal tour. So that particular
The graphic history of hip hop.
Yep, there's a little sun spark on there. So there you go. Graphic History of Hip Hop by Walter Greason. It's Grayson. I know, but I'm reading it. No, anyway, Grayson and Tim Fielder.
Ladies and gentlemen, we would be remiss if we didn't say that Tim Fielder has numerous projects under his belt.
He's surrounded by them.
And Walter Greason also has numerous projects behind his belt or under his belt or somewhere around his belt. And it's kind of choking him a little bit. Yeah. But they've come together for this project, and it's going to be up to Alex which way we start. But I can't wait to find out the origins of this particular project. What do you want to do, Alex? You want to go back or you want to go forward?
A little minute or so of context here. So again, for those of you who for some strange reason haven't really been listening to the other 300 and some odd episodes of this show, Tim, give us a little bit of a backdrop of yourself, sir. A little bit of a history.
I'm a visual Afrofuturist and graphic novelist. I was out of the game for a very long time. But about 10 years ago this year, I came back formally into comics, really around 2014, made contact with Alex, who we had both interacted with each other at the Children's Arts Carnival. And while also producing my project, Maddie's Rocket, I also did his graphic novel here. Let me see if I can get this without tearing down my backdrop.
Whoa.
This guy here. It's this guy here. That one.
There you go.
Look at that. Hunter.
Yes. Yeah, which was the first formal graphic novel that kind of reintroduced me back to the form. I've been doing comics and animation, but this was the one that kind of, okay, I'm back. And of course, this is where I got my feet wet. And I did that project, and then I proceeded forward with Maddie's Rocket, which eventually would be collected, the floppies, into graphic novel form, into the graphic novel, which really formally came out in early 2020, endorsed by Steph Curry, the 3-Point King, during the Carnegie Hall Afrofuturism Festival. And concurrently, while that was going on, Walter and I were both practicing Afrofuturists. We connected in 2016 during this event called Planet Deep South in Jackson, Mississippi, where Afrofuturists from all over the globe really came and converged on one spot. And that was our connection with how we always interacted. And with the Carnegie Hall Afrofuturism Festival, which broke my career out into the public sphere. Because full disclosure, since I know this is about authors, At the time of this recording, I am 57 years old, almost 58. People say, "Why do you announce your age?" Man, I do it because people need to know. They need to understand that not everything is going to come to you in your 20s and your 30s. So
preach, kid, preach.
Yes. So my career broke into the public sphere really at the beginning of 2022 in the New York Times, and it was lots of coverage during the Carnegie Hall Afrofuturism Festival. My company, Diesel Funk Studios, was a formal festival partner, along with many that were all over the city and the country in New York City. And that really changed things. And I believe that kind of coming out into the public as a figure really culminated in the Smithsonian Afrofuturism Festival called Afrofuturism, A History of Black Futures, which the exhibit was curated by Kevin Strait, good brother who works out of the Smithsonian. And the book variant was edited by Kinshasa Holman. I'm sorry. I'm dyslexic, but Kinshasa. I love you, Kinshasa. I'm gonna get the name right. Anyway, so the thing that makes the book relevant is that when you come to the section where it talks about Afrofuturist comics, the first example of what a Afrofuturist comics is Maddie's Rocket.
Wow.
Which I didn't plan that. I didn't pay anybody off because I didn't have no money. For that to have happened and for me to be featured in the exhibit, there's a quote. I'm in every section. I thought I was just in the back section towards the end, but it turns out I was at least featured at points during all of the sections. The initial historical section at the front, then the middle part where they covered a lot of Parliament, Octavia, Chip Delaney, and things like that. I was in one of the video displays, and then in the video displays in the back, where they showed what was happening in all the different mediums, comics, fashion, film. They showcased my work in the comic section. All that to say, without continuing to meander on here, a lot has happened. I am eternally grateful. There are many. I did not do this by myself. I have to thank Alex and Chris for allowing me to, one of those guys that swim along with sharks. They're swimming on the, what do they call them? Monitor fit? What do they call them? This guy that's swimming on the surface. That has got me back into the game. What do they call them?
Lucky. No, just swim with sharks, you know. No, I have no idea.
I mean, but they're the fish. Come on, work with me.
Anybody the fish. Can call it in. Don't worry about it.
Okay. So anyway, but I'm just saying that experience allowed me to really get my chops back. Not only with the graphic novel, but I must have done maybe 5 to 10 covers of you all's rapid read series.
Oh, there's a ton. There's a
ton.
So
yeah, that got me back into the game, and eventually all that stuff that I produced for you guys is going to be collected in the book I'm working on now, which is Black Metropolis, which is the written variant of the exhibit that will cover all of my career from when I started as a young boy all the way up to the present day. That's what I'm working on now. And in late 2022, I received the phone call from, take it away, Walter.
Walter Greason. Walter, could you give us a little background for yourself and then bring us up to your working with this shy fella?
No, Tim is a joy, and I will never forget N Square for a denuclearization project for the Air Force. And I saw the art that he did spontaneously on site for that and was just like, dang, next chance I get, next time somebody asks me for something, I'm calling up Tim Fielder. Yeah. And that was December of 22. I had been working with New York City's public schools for about 2 years, producing a social studies curriculum for them. I'm a professional historian. I've won a couple of awards for the histories I've written. Just won an award as an economist for the first time for my work on reparations.
Fantastic.
And so mostly for my professional life. And so it's been a lot of really deep academic stuff where people, if I'm lucky, if 2 or 3 people ever see or read it. But long before that, places where I started running into Blackjack and Alex Simmons and just being in awe of the creators who have built the field, doing things like ECBAC, East Coast Black Age of Comics, traveling around. I got together, probably for me, this kicked off a lot in 2013 with Jibba Anderson out in Detroit and in Chicago at C2E2. we did a comic that was a bestseller, real short piece called The Holy Bible, Dignity and Divinity, where we recast all the major Bible stories with women as the main characters.
Whoa.
And of course, most notably, the central question was, what if Mary had a daughter? And a lot of people called us blasphemous and jumped on us about rewriting some sacred stories. But that's been my
Like,
career.
that's never been done before.
So that's been what I've been about, man. Comics and stories like these have been a huge part of my entire physical existence, just learning about the Thing when I was 4 years old and then getting into Fantastic Four stories. And so this journey has just been amazing. And Tim has made so many of my dreams come true by bringing his art to the script that we made for the New York City school system. They wanted a 50th anniversary history of hip hop. They said, can we do this as a graphic novel? I was like, I know the dude.
As a floppy. They first did it as a floppy.
Yes, indeed. Like 20, 23, 24 pages of content. And they gave it out for free to 100,000 students November of 23. Just a great situation where we got to work with Joe Schmidt and his office in Civics for All. They've done probably 20 or 25 different comics on various topics of ethnic and American history and dealing with stories that don't typically get told in textbooks. And so they've given out over 2 million copies of these books into the school system.
Fantastic.
It's one of these great stories about using graphic art to reach students and to foster literacy and better critical thinking. And there's even more coming. We're getting ready to figure out what 2024 into 2025 is going to look like. We have contracted and are pulling together volumes 2 and 3 of the graphic history of hip hop. And so just some amazing things that in my career, I've been extraordinarily blessed to show theoretically the way people think from what writing does to what images do. And then for me, it goes particularly towards architecture and urban design. So how do we use those kinds of media to shape our imaginations and to dream bigger dreams, different kinds of visions for the future? And it gets me in a lot of trouble as a historian. Historians are supposed to talk only about the past. And so most of my colleagues are like, what are you talking about? We can't do anything. The future is out of our hands. But no, like I refuse to accept the fact that we're powerless and that the stories of Afrofuturism in particular and the creativity of these projects show me how much power we have.
What's that phrase? If we don't learn from our past, we're doomed to.
So
that's definitely an organic reason to go from the past into the potentials of the future, trying to take those lessons forward.
It's also a reason why there's a lot of empowered people who are trying to limit what we can learn from the past so that they can try and repeat it in the future. So
or alter it
altogether.
That's the core of my Afrofuturism is a key phrase that basically every past was once a future. So whatever we think was solid and immutable, before that, nobody knew what was going to happen. So we got to keep that humility in mind about what we can do and what possibilities are.
Yeah. Wonderful. I'd like to talk about a common thread that Alex and I have with what you're doing as a way to get into the graphic history of hip hop. And I may sneeze, I feel it right here. Years and years ago, Alex and I were discussing an article that I found in American Educator. And it was about how graphic novels and comic books were proving to be a key tool for those with learning challenges or reading challenges. And what the studies had shown was that the illustrations of graphic novels or comic books helped in a specific place with people who are having a lot of hard time with reading, in that the words didn't create pictures in their mind. So this was very valuable in bridging the gap. And then you would go from comic books to graphic novels to spot illustration to just prose. And matter of fact, we designed a curriculum. Alex took it and ran with it and perfected it and taught it for years. But as soon as we heard we were doing this interview, that all came into my mind, and how I was a teacher for 30 years and how I was able to use those lessons to try and influence all. I was more the sweat hogs guys. Anyone who didn't want to be in school, they came into my class. The one thing that kept coming in my mind, oh my God, this is a book that people have been waiting for, right? That graphic history of hip hop, it's perfect for the 50th anniversary, yes, but in my mind, I have 2 or 3 generations of people at this point who can share this book, who can say, yeah, this is the part of the book that was me. And then in the middle of the book, this was me. And then the kid whose book it probably is, he can enjoy all of it, but recognize himself towards the end with the people he listens to. So can you talk to us about, either one who wants to start, the origins of this? Now, we know that someone came to you and said, could you do this? But how did the first conversations go? Because, you know, that idea of, okay, here's this stuff on vinyl, CD, streaming, and we're going to now take it and put it into, what would you have, 27, 30 pages to encompass, what, 50 years? That's right. A challenge. I want to hear how this
is what we'll do. I'll let Walter start off with the part leading up to the floppy. Then the formation of the graphic history company, I'll take that. Go ahead, Walter.
Cool.
Gotcha, bro. So yeah, this was a big deal. Tim says yes. We signed the contracts, and there's a blank page like this. And so we got to sit down and start figuring out, okay, what's it going to look like? And so even though I had been in conversation with guys like Christopher Priest and Dwayne McDuffie and Reg Hudlin for years and years, I had never actually written like a fully scripted book until I got to Jibba's book with the Holy Bible. And that was all splash pages. It was mad easy. Like I could just put scripture in, I could put in a little historical analysis, and he went at it. With Tim, he gave me the first really detailed piece on how to do a script and how to actually break the page up, think about narrative sequencing, figure out how to build all the elements. And so the first thing that we were doing was working through, okay, music as punctuation. How do we actually bring the energy into each page with a particular quote? And so one of the ones that a lot of folks come at me about is the James Brown. It's about the big payback. And so we got a piece in there before we get to the core of the hip hop history about all the forerunners, all the people like James Brown who set the table for hip hop to come together. But that's always at the core of the page is a quote or a lyric that actually captures the emotion of the historical moment. Then Tim is building out the actual imagery and the experiences of the people at that moment. So he's giving those pictures so that people, it's amazing. The turntable stuff alone that he does, showing how people spin the wheels.
Cool Herc.
Absolutely genius. And the last piece is really the historical content where I'm talking about what kinds of policy changes are happening, the way things are moving around people that they're not necessarily aware of, but they're coming to grapple with through the music that's evolving. And so there are these 3 narrative layers that move throughout the initial floppy. And then we did some things when we decided, it was like, yo, this is hot. This is going to be big. And so we wanted to form a company and say, this is more than just this one book for the school students. And so we had to start thinking about, okay, how do we get this to be a much larger experience? And again, Tim was just the revolutionary in taking what we had at hand and making it into 90 pages. So yeah, man, tell them how it went.
Tim has no limitation. Tim is like, this is one of those people, I think if they fired him in a space capsule above the Earth's atmosphere and he was looking at the galaxies beyond, he would go, okay, I think I'll start here. Right. Whereas everybody else is going, oh my God, look at all this. And Tim's going, okay, wow, okay, look, that's Tim.
We're going to move this planet over here. And then we're going to...
I wish it were that simple, but
I didn't say it was simple. I just said it's what you do.
Yeah, you never really hesitated too much at the difficulty of it. My impression is always you diving in and saying, all right, how? Let's figure it out.
Because it has to be done.
Yeah, bro.
It has to be done. I once had a person ask me, I was on a panel at the Mississippi Book Festival, and a guy was talking about the complexity of managing the workload and doing that. And I know he was expecting some kind of deep answer. I just looked at him and said, I understand, but that's the job. It's that simple. That's the job. My job
was dangerous when you took it.
My job as a sequential artist, when I'm working in the sequential artist area, is to take the words of any writer, as Alex and Chris, you guys know that because I've had to do the same thing with your stuff, and to basically work with what is written, what is implied, and what is not there.
Mm.
Because what you have, they're characters, written characters, but they don't describe everything. So my job is to apply the visual narrative, which dances with your written narrative. So I have always said, if someone gives me a one-page treatment, I can turn that treatment into a 1,000-page comic if I want. I can do anything because comics are malleable. I hope that's the word. They can be anything. It can be any shape, any form, any sequence. So when Walter, who his love of hip hop, Jesus, been into hip hop since he was a child, but he's been formally teaching hip hop since 1990. Now you guys know, and Walter, I should forewarn you, everyone in this discussion other than yourself are all squares. We're all squares, and that's why they're not doing anything to say anything back, because it's true. We didn't play with violent toys; we played with action figures when we were younger, right? So there's a difference, right? Yeah. We're all squares. So for me, I look at it from a technical point of view where I say, okay, I have to expand, contract, and investigate what the words are. So when Walter sends me the script, it's okay, he followed the panel structure, but embedded within it are the things that he's only implying, right? Because he doesn't have only 24 pages to work with, so he can't go into everything, right? So the things he's only implying in words, I then have the opportunity to provide a visual with it, which may not have words with it. So when we put those things together, he then circles back and adds more words, right? And since this is not a book about one person, this is a book about an entire field where there are multiple players, multiple operators in it over the course of 50 years, right? So the 24-page comic came out. It was awesome. Tons of press, tons of media. It was like the greatest promotional campaign ever. But then we had to make a decision like, okay, we want to turn this into a company. Now, on at least 2 or 3 occasions over the last 10 years, and even before that, I've always wanted to form a company that would create, I didn't call them graphic histories at the time. I called them biographies. We do stuff like March, so on and so forth, right? But the primary focus behind it was this guy here. Where is he? Bertram Fitzgerald did a series of books called Golden Legacy. Now, this is the hardcover edition, but for I grew up in Clarksville, Mississippi, and for the vast majority of kids, their introduction, young kids who grew up, born in the 60s or grew up during the 70s and 80s, their introduction, their formal literary introduction to Black history and civil rights history was through Golden Legacy comics. So Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, those books were done by Bertram. Now, I don't know if I've ever told Alex and Chris this, but I actually had the pleasure of working with Bertram.
Nope.
Yes, in the late 90s, I met him. This is before he passed away in the 2000s. But there was a period where Bertram was considering transferring all of his work because he had some issue with his plates, his printing plates. Because people, how dare this Black man go on and make all this money, right, and do this thing, and how dare he do that? Because a lot of people don't know is that when he started his company, people were like, well, okay, I never bought his stuff in comic book shops. It was never in any convenience stores or pharmacies. Why did he make his money? Bertram made his deal with Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola distributed his books into all these schools all over the country. And that was revolutionary. And I always felt that was a viable thing. And when I talk with Walter about that, Walter, of course, he's a professor of economics. So we put our brains together and decided to create, ultimately, which would become, fancy word, the Graphic History Company. So when the book was out, I remember our other partner, Christina, was freaking out. She said, they're giving away the store, right? because the 24 pages was going out to everybody. You could just download it. So there were hundreds of thousands of people downloading that thing. So we made a decision over the course of a week where we would figure out, okay, what are we going to do as a company? And we knew, okay, we have to create a expanded variant of the book, which I was like, okay, if I can get it to 54 pages, we good. And we were putting together the website, and I asked Walter, Walter, for the website, man, I just need you to give me a timeline, by the year of important elements of hip hop, important incidents. Okay, man. So he writes, because he's a fast writer, comes back the next freaking day. I'm in upstate New York on the talk. And I'm like, this guy breaks down 42 years worth of incidents. And I'm like, Walter, and I'm thinking to myself, there's no way in hell that I'm putting this up on the website. I need you to go back and just give me what happened in the 70s, what happened in the 80s, just a broad description. And this description of this timeline here, that's the graphic novel. So that would go from 24 pages and 32 pages with front and back matter to 92 pages. Fully rendered graphic novel, Alex, as you well know, much to your chagrin, finishing beyond the time that you would like me to. Because it has to be that. It's the epic storyline. And the epic storyline demands epic art. It demands it. Now, eventually, I'm going to have to take a break from that because it's going to kill me unless I do my walks every day. I have to do 4 to 5 miles a day just to get myself straight. But we did that. And so the Graphic History Company was born. The purpose of the Graphic History Company is to produce books on all these hugely important historical but social justice leaning concepts. And so it's open to anything: the graphic history of hip hop, the graphic history of video games, graphic history of Afrofuturism, which is the next book that I think Walter and I, after we finish the graphic history of hip hop, it'll be the graphic history of Afrofuturism. It'll be myself, Walter, and Ronaldo Anderson doing. And that is it. And the world is open to us. We received an anointing in the first event of our book tour that we've been on since May with Andrew Iden, who co-authored March with John Lewis, basically sat down with a conversation with us and effectively gave us the anointing. And I was grateful for that because he didn't have to do that. And it has been a ride for the last 2 months. And we got another month coming with stops at the Smithsonian workshops there and a signing. And then we got to do the Metropolitan Museum with a workshop and a signing. And we'll figure out where New Orleans is going to be at this point. Still wording word back. And then we got San Diego Comic-Con. We're going to make that happen, man. But go ahead.
Well, hold it. Walter, how do you feel about all this? How does this feel?
Yeah, Walter, how do you feel about that?
Amazed, honored, thrilled.
Rev it up. No, he's just broken down. I don't know how long this took. I'm not going to ask, but from the point where you guys decided, okay, this is a business. We're going to start this business. And as things started to move forward, how did that feel?
Oh, I love this. So alongside my academic work from the very beginning, because I do weird academic things that don't fit neatly into boxes, I never thought I would really get tenure. So I built 2 businesses for myself and my family right when I got a tenure track job. And then based on that, adapted that when my mother became very sick and nearly died into a global company that helped me build businesses for thousands of people. So yeah, the construction of a business thing is just a normal part of my life. It's just I've never worked with someone as talented as Tim to provide the fuel to make the thing grow very rapidly. Most of the time I'm talking with somebody on a 3 to 5 year timeline before there's profitability. This is something that the response in the first month was over 2 billion interactions around the world, people reaching out to get copies and see what the graphic history was about. And the entire field of professional history is now building infrastructure to encourage more people to do more graphic history. Like, it's insane. It's unbelievable how amazing this project has been.
I want to ask again, because there's no holding back the passion that Tim has for what he does. So that's very clear to our audience. as Tim pointed out a little while ago, you've been into hip hop as opposed to us old fogies who don't know squat. You've been into it. It's something that you love. It's something. How does the music appeal to you? On what level?
Yeah, so I was a little kid, born literally the week after Kool Herc's party. And so by the time I was 4 or 5 years old, I'm listening to the Sugar Hill Gang and Curtis Blow, and this is shaping just the way I see the world, right alongside the kind of comic book influences. The two things were deeply intertwined in my life. And that piece, by the time I got to like age 10 or 11 and Roxanne is out, Run DMC is growing, like these things are shaping the way that I speak, the way that I articulate the world. And in the context of my family that drove me to say education is your path, that's how you're going to succeed. Chuck D and KRS-One come in the mid 80s and are talking about the need for Black history, that people don't know these stories, that we need to learn and study Malcolm X. And man, that just changed everything. Like I was in a very white academic context, but deep in the Black church. And so the confluence of those two forces through the lens of hip hop basically made me determined to become a Black scholar, and particularly to use digital resources, to use every tool at my disposal to expand what we have out as public knowledge. Like things like the 1619 Project, to me, like when I got to talk with Nicole Hannah-Jones and say, use journalism to teach history more aggressively. This was normal when I'm mentoring Ibram Kendi, and he's saying, I don't know if stamped at the beginning will work. I'm like, are you kidding? You're giving a dictionary of racist ideas that everybody can reference. This is just a normal part of the way my life grew. And so using hip hop and the way it challenges authority is at the foundations of who I am, and finding ways to teach and share that. I built a lot of really good educational tools all over my career. Nothing is as good as this graphic history. The way students in particular respond to it, that they are fired up and determined to come back and learn more, that's been a standard piece of my professional development practices, telling teachers, students shouldn't be distracted by feeling like their phone or their Xbox or their PlayStation is better than being in class. If you're doing your job well as a teacher, they'll drop all that to come and sit there and work with you because you've made it about them and their dreams and their lives. And this book does that. They see themselves, they hear themselves, they believe in themselves as a result of the experience of reading. And then they want to create their own. They want to build out and have a different kind of voice. And that's my dream. That's the singular reason why I love Tim and his work so much, is that when we got mobbed by students up in Queens 6 months ago, we were like, okay, yeah, this is what this is far beyond what we hoped for.
Mobbed? I love that word.
Yeah, it was pretty alarming because we were in Queens. It was during that week when we were really doing a lot of media. We were working with Joe Schmidt from the DOE. We had to tour the city, basically. We must have done 6 visits. And a weird thing, all this was going on while I was also touring in the city on Maddie's Rocket. So it was all this stuff going on at the same time. So the end of the year for me was insane. But so anyway, we're there, we're at the school, and the kids have the books, and the teacher's like, okay, you can go sign the books. And they just, like 70 kids, because there's not just one school, multiple classes in the same room. So I'm just me. I like, let me do a drawing. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna place it right. There was no time to do that. It was just, and then you hear, because all this is recorded on video, you hear the teacher saying, I don't know how he's gonna sign all those books. Just trying to stay calm because you're recognizing that it's these kids have something that they are connecting to. We look just like them, right? We are of color. That's the correct phrase to use these days, right? We both brothers. And we gave something to them. We provided a service to them. We didn't have to be there, but we provided a service to them thanks to the Civics for All group through the DOE. And then we actively went out. And that's the one thing for me. I'm always a huge fan of what I call the perpetual tour, book tour. You hit it. That's the game. You hit it. It's not fun. It ain't meant to be fun. It's just meant to look fun. Nobody cares what I'm going to as directly as an operator, but what you're doing is you are building media share, audience share, and critical share by providing access not only to the book, but to yourself. Mm-hmm. You're not just selling the book, you're selling you. You're selling your persona.
Forming a community.
That's what I mean. Yeah. That sounds better the way you said. You're forming a community by going
a writer.
Out. But, yes, yeah, but that's my point. So and I have to say it again for Walter to, because he didn't have to. He could have said, Tim, we just did this one thing. Let's do volume 2 and 3 and be done with it. But the thing that I love about what Walter did was for the first time, he actually gave me skin in the game. This is I own it with him. You know what I mean? So that means I have something now I can pass on to my children. You know what I mean? So the graphic history of hip hop will feed Jacob and Max and Johnny Lee years from now.
Legacy.
And that, when you do that, then you don't mind spending a week and a half in Minnesota and driving around like a maniac to get to St. Cloud University. Then you got to go to North Dakota to catch the flight to fly to Michigan. And then you're in Michigan, and then you're there doing workshops for Juneteenth for 4 days. And then you got to immediately go to DC because the White House is celebrating Black Space Week at the Smithsonian. So you got to go there. And plus, it gives me the opportunity to drop the book off to Kinshasa and Key and Kevin. And then you got to make it back. But hey, we didn't know all that was going to happen. So now we got to go to NJPAC in Newark last week for Juneteenth, meet some people there. Now, okay, finally I got a break, right? Oh, but not really, because now we have to make up for the podcast. We were too busy to keep, we got to do it today. So that's the life. It is a life that exists independently of the direct sales market that you and I do. We know it's not about Batman or Superman. It's about building that community and interacting with people who are willing customers.
I have 2 clarification questions. The original 24 page was contracted from, was it a New York City education or was it a national, right? So those were given away, right? That's the floppy. Yes. The bigger, more in-depth version of graphic history of hip hop, is that for sale? Is that the same? So that one's for sale.
Yes.
Okay.
Where?
Yeah, where? Let's get to the where, then I have my second question. Where is it for sale?
GraphicHistoryOfHipHop.com, and then all the online booksellers all have it.
Boom. Beautiful. Okay, now I'm going to ask Walter a question. Can you give us a hint of what was in the original floppy and then what is included in the larger graphic history? Now, of course, the reason for this is to make them jealous that they didn't get the original floppy and make our audience hungry to go out and buy the graphic history of hip hop. So go ahead, Walter.
Yeah, the core basic history. The basic history is all in the 24 page floppy, where you get to start with Gil Scott-Heron and the Last Poets and what was New York City like in the late 1960s, early 1970s, before hip hop began to take form. We spend about 10 pages, almost half the book, talking about all the social conditions that shape hip hop and how does it evolve into the early 1980s. But then the second half is a lot about its regional and national growth. So how does it begin to grow out and expand into the West Coast, into the Deep South, and how does it evolve as it moves into different geographies? The portraiture that Tim provides of all the different artists, he likes to joke about how intense the work of too many rappers, had to draw too many rappers, and that's a big part of it. But then there's also an essay for academic use inside the 24 issues floppy about the main cultural themes, how they evolve in the United States. The 90 page, on the other hand, when Tim talks about that timeline, that's literally what it is. It starts in, what is it, 63?
64 it starts.
64 with the Civil Rights Act. And then we go Voting Rights Act, and then we focus on the assassinations of King and Kennedy. And there's just periodically pages that have a year at the top of the page. And then on that page, it tells you a significant event that shapes or is influenced or defines the core of hip hop, up until 2006 when Nas releases Hip Hop Is Dead.
I will also add, so for example, one of the very, very impressive things about Walter's timeline, which was initially for the website that eventually became the book, because I was like, there's no way in hell we're putting all this content on the website, just giving it away. We've already done that through the 24-page book. Now it's about, we got to eat. But the thing I loved about it was he wrote about Richard Nixon resigning from office. That was 1973.
Mm-hmm.
What else happened in 1973? DJ Kool Herc and his sister put on the first hip hop event. So these things, hip hop is, and I've learned so much about it just because I've been forced to in doing this book, is it's integrated into American history, and ultimately because of its expansion, it becomes world history. So it becomes this world, this geopolitical movement, a massive scale, because it is effectively coexisting with all of these. So Sister Soldier, you remember when Sister Soldier got into it with the Clinton administration? Okay, but she's a female rapper, right? But she was like really like directly in interaction with the Clinton administration, with the presidential office, executive office. That was important. It was important to show that because Skiers was his sister who was already making her mark in the field, that music field, but she also was so dynamic and so expansive in the way she carried on, which also shows that hip hop is not just a male thing. It's a male and female thing. It is a Black and Latino and a Caribbean and a white thing. It's a global phenomenon. And my objective, yes, with the drowning in rappers that I used, was to be able to, on one practical level, I wanted to make sure that we were thorough, but also I wanted to make sure that we were covered. Because that was important. You don't want anyone coming up to us saying, like we had that in the 24-page book, well, you didn't show enough brown participation. It was true. It was there, but not really. They can't say that now. When there are no women represented, we had them in there, but you can't say that now. Right. You can't say that. So there are one or two acts I would have liked to have put in there that, one, I said, we'll save for the next book. And the other one, we missed that one because you can't get them all. There's no way.
With the fact that you have, I'm sorry, Chris, I'm just going to say, with the fact that you have the website, you can always drop something on the website. So you're getting the floppy, you're buying the book, and then on the website you can have these little side hors d'oeuvres, these little pieces.
No.
It's going to go into the expanded.
One is saying no. I think there's a meeting later.
Any new work that I produce, whether it's localized projects that Walter and I are now in discussions, Michigan wants their own thing for their regional operators. Minnesota wants it for their regional operators. If that's being produced, that's going in the expanded edition. Yeah.
When I'm thinking about
I don't waste is not, I'm not trying to be about waste at this point. I'm too old for that.
Yeah, no, for me, the website piece is as much text as we ever need to generate.
We're good.
Away on the keyboard. So there's no limit, like you were saying, about what you can do with web content.
Walter, I'm assuming here, you had an experience that was similar to what Alex and I experienced. Just so you know, when we first started this, Tim would come on and draw on screen while we were, so we always got a hint of his speed and the dynamic energy of his art. But when he agreed to do the rapid reads project, which was, I think we wound up having 5 or 6 different blackjack titles to make it affordable and easily digestible adventures for everybody, right? And we would just say, we're thinking this kind of thing, this is happening, and Tim will go, and then he would come back with something that would break our brain because we hadn't seen that style art yet. So from what you wrote to when you first started seeing the art, what was that moment like, or that experience like, to see the Tim Fielder effect on your writing.
Yeah, so I don't know if Tim will remember. He probably will remember this. When I was first trying to explain to the guy who hired us, Joe Schmidt, how amazing Tim's skills are. When I was talking about that N square thing with the Air Force people, he spontaneously, inside of 10 minutes, drew these two pieces. One was a classroom, futuristic classroom, where there's like a 3D holographic imager in the middle of the room. And then there at all the surrounding amphitheater desks, there are little visual interfaces. You will have seen a polished version of this from Meta that they put up in a commercial about a year ago. And it was like, they took friggin' Tim's design. That Drake's like that. I've seen that before. But the other one that I still have on my computer and use to teach students about imagining different kinds of civilization, he was talking about future agriculture. And then it wasn't just turbines. It was these giant white towers that were spreading water and fertilizer and enabling kind of mass growth over very small areas that would produce in more than abundance in terms of food supply. And I'm just like, this is sketches. This dude is doodling in front of us and creating like what the world should look like. And so, yeah, it's very much like that moment. Once I saw him do that, and he comes back with page one, and we're talking about Last Poets and Gil Scott, and he has this rendering of the Twin Towers from the late 60s. I'm like, I didn't need to see anything else. I was just like, keep sending everything. Yeah. Like, people will never recover from this. They will hold on to this experience forever. Because, yeah, like I work with other folks who do illustrations. I published my first 2 sci-fi stories with Stanford University back in 98 or 99 or something. And just people don't have the dedication to craft and then the capacity and the skill to produce it in a timely way that Tim has. Man,
timely. I am not the fastest. There's something, I think I saw Jamal Igle put up a post recently about producing a 24-page comic in a month.
Right.
And he said, that's crazy. Yeah. And it can be done. I've seen people do it well. But I don't know if that's me. It's certainly not with the art, with the fully rendered art style.
Right.
Which I use all forms of technology to do it. I've done that for decades at this point. But I'm not a young man anymore. Yes, I know I'm younger than you and Alex. I get all that. Y'all never cease to remind me of that.
The world is younger than Alex.
You're still young, man.
I'll get you later, Chris. I'll get you later.
I get all that. But I had a period where I was always working. I never stopped working, but I was not active in a public space. So when I made the decision to get back into the game in 2009, well, now here we are 12 years later, and now my career is, at this point, still much work to do, but I'm no longer obscure, as it were. I'm not obscure anymore. Am I the biggest name out there? Not even close to it, but I am now, not in comics, but in the Afrofuturist field, I am considered prominent. And I never thought that would have happened. So now, with working with Walter, what's happened is it allowed me to take the opportunity inherent in this other subject of hip hop, which is bigger than all of that. And now I knew, because as I've said before, I admitted it before in interviews, when I did the first month or 2 on the graphic history of hip hop, I just thought, oh, this is great. This will be a really well-paying freelance gig. But within 2 months, I knew, oh, this is not that. This is something that you have to deliver every bit of infinitum, every bit of Maddie's Rocket level work, because this has meaning that transcends my personal issues. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than Walter. It's about doing a honest reenaction, or I don't know if that's the right word, an honest accounting of something that happened and is still happening on a massive planetary scale.
Well,
there's no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
In a time where parts of our country are trying to subtract the contribution of African American historical figures, cultural figures. This is a great piece of rebellion in my eyes, because we're here, and this is what we have done. This is fact. This is not whatever the hell you're spinning over there saying it didn't happen. It's really important right now, important right now, that people step up and say, no, this is part of American history. This is about world history. Everyone is a part of that. And I just think it's fantastic.
It has altered the course of my life. Yes, it has.
It also serves, and maybe Chris is saying the same thing, but I'm just going to clarify it a bit more for myself. One of the things that I felt plays a part in why some of the anti-Semitic and more racist attitudes are flourishing is because a lot of the people who suffered through not the first, but a more recent battle with this, say the people who suffered through World War II, who were in concentration camps and all of that, most of them are gone. And so their voice is not here to go, oh, hell no. Many of the people my age and younger who had relatives who went through that, some of us have been convinced that maybe I'm remembering it wrong, or maybe I was lied to. And those relatives aren't there to go, no, you weren't lied to. That is the crap that went down. Yeah. And then the younger crowd is looking to us and going, I'm not hearing a whole lot from you. And I'm hearing this lie, and then that's supposedly the truth in this. So now I'm confused, so I ain't going to do shit. Pardon me. I don't normally curse. And so bottom line is,
I'm trying, guys. I'm trying to keep this a classy place, but then look at Alex.
Yeah, every now and then I slip. But see, I still get to deal with that in the editing. But the bottom line of it is we not only need to be reminded, those of us who saw it or lived it, but we also need to be able to pass on these records, these accountings, these files and facts and moments and stories to those who've come after us, because they need to know, yes, this did happen. Yes, there is something worth fighting for. Yes, people did unite on a common factor. Yes, we are part of the global tapestry, so forth and so on. When someone looks at hip hop, again, not being totally connected to it, and go, oh, well, that was a music thing. And then they see this book and go, oh, snap. Motivation. Cause and effect. Wow, I didn't. And that's going to open up some minds. So once certain people, and here's the E word, once certain ethical people become clear about what it is they're involved in, and as you just said, and I know Walter also feels, once you realize the value of what it is you're trying to share, you can't do anything else but bring your A game. You're obligated by the very nature of who you are. And Tim, to compliment you, wild and crazy man, you've always been motivated by your passion. Whatever that passion has been, whatever that thing you've committed to, that's what you've always brought to the table. And I am extremely happy that you and Walter got together to work on this. I'm not finished. I'm having a moment here.
Oh, I know that.
I'm extremely glad that you were there for us, for me, for Chris, and I am thrilled that you were there with Walter, for Walter, and I think that in years to come, people will be saying they were glad you were there for them.
Thank you. It is humbling to know that apparently people keep saying I've had that effect on them, and I am grateful for that. As you well know, I don't have any problem forming words, forming phrases and sentences. That's never been my issue. And that used to get me in trouble. But we exist in a world now where there comes a point where you have to be able to verbalize and express what you're doing, because that world is gone now. That world of the 20th century is gone. Now we're in a world where you're not just selling product, you're selling yourself. You're selling people who are interested in what Walter thinks. You know what I'm saying? That's right. Why exactly? And they're interested in what I show in terms of the visual. Now I'll add my narrative elements to it as well. But the objective is the script is first, and then the visuals provide the flotation to the script. But without a script, without a primary focal point, without a inherent knowledge of the form that Walter has, there's no book, there's no company. And so all of the passion in the world is great, but it doesn't work without the fuel that you can burn. And that's what this has been. And I'm enormously grateful again. I did not get to this point by myself. I've learned my lessons. I've learned, oh, well, you can do that. Okay, but you can't do that, right? You have to try it this way. So I've learned that, but at least when I learned those things, they were those lessons that I learned over the last 10 years. I'm not even talking about the first part of my comics career, because the first part of the comics career, that was then. But right now, I'm aware, much more clear on who I am and what is most primary to the work I do and what I'm interested in. It's like what I recognize how important it is to have institutional relationships. And sometimes those relationships are comfortable, sometimes they're uncomfortable. I get a great deal of pleasure out of knowing that I'm doing stuff with the Smithsonian and with Carnegie Hall, and I'm asked back there. I get a certain level of pleasure out of knowing that the work that Walter and I are doing is quasi peeking its head into the governmental space, the public policy space, because that means the work is not just entertainment. It is actually affecting public policy. And that means you're hopefully making people's lives better.
Go ahead.
I want to have some fun here before we end. This has been great, but we need to sell some copies. What I'm looking for, Walter, your favorite depictions of rappers at the hands of Tim Fielder. Give us 2 or 3. Oh, you got to see this guy or that person or this woman. What you got?
Yeah, the Public Enemy pieces are clearly, and he knew this from beginning, the way that Public Enemy was shown was, to me, the heart of why to try and do this. One thing that shows up on the website that reflects the other side of me is the Native Tongues movement, which is a collection of, I want to say, 15 or 16 different artists all on the single page. I would love to blow that Native Tongue page out into its own specific thing at some point down the road, because we just don't give enough love to all of those artists. But yeah, there's just...
Would that end with Chappelle? Would that culminate with Chappelle?
In that period we were talking about, yeah, no, you can't. You would have.
Oh, that's a good idea. We might have to do that. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You heard it here first.
Yeah.
What was the most surprising depiction for you, Walter?
Oh, controversial. There's no question. Look at our Native Tongues peoples.
That's cool.
Gorgeous. So now there's no most controversial. We wanted to do in the original version, Kanye West.
Okay.
And then this was something that, again, given positions he's taken, this is not the best thing to put into a school setting. But for the expanded edition, absolutely. We can't ignore him in the time period.
No, can't.
And so when we're making it available to the general public, we got to uphold the kind of artistic and historical responsibility to be accurate and as thorough as possible.
Excellent. A question for Tim in the same area, but who proved most challenging for you to render?
Oh, God.
And then who was the most fun to render?
No one's asked me that before.
This is my job.
The most challenging portrait. Oh, Native Tongues.
Yeah.
Oh, no question. There were so many of those. I can't use profanity here. Okay. There were so many of those MFs on that page. They all didn't make the cut, by the way. I had to remove like 3 of them because it went from 9 panels to 12 panels. And I think now, I forget, it's 18 or 20 of them. And then at the end, people were like, yo, you got to remove this person. I'm like, I'm not. Can I use profanity? Use profanity. I'm like, I'm not removing shit, man. This page is done. No, I'm never going back to this page again. It took 2 months to finish that one page.
Wow.
That one page took longer than the rest of the book.
Who was the most fun to render for you?
Oh, wow. Okay. Most fun. Oh, Salt and Pepper, because they're beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
It was nice. I would say Little Kim, but it was really Salt and Pepper. Little Kim is a little sad to me or because she is this absolutely amazing rapper, female rapper, and some of the most beautiful women in the world. My God, Walter definitely threw a little meat to me, and I appreciated that. But the one who was the most fun to do was probably Salt and Pepper, because they're fun, they're light, they're still incredibly beautiful women, and they always carried themselves with a little bit of agitation, but they went right up to the edge. It was always about the sexiness, but they went right up to the edge, crossing over into some Millie Jackson stuff, but they pulled it back right at the last second. And I did
there was that combination of clever and insightful and fun.
Exactly.
And they never forgot the groove. So it was really cool. What else, Alex? What else we gonna say here? I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, the last thing here is imparting some sort of bit of thought here. Obviously, you want people to go out and get the book, and I think this episode has proven that they should. But if, again, remembering our audience is also aspiring and emerging and sometimes struggling writers and creatives, anything that you want to share with them, Walter, Tim, separately, as a sort of a going away present, some bit of wisdom?
You go first, Walter.
Oh my goodness. You asked the educator to say, what do you want to take away? I would say dream big and never let it go. Believe that you're going to go for what makes you the fullest, happiest human being. There's enormous adversity to tear us down and take us away from what our heart has and what we bring from our truest selves. The best successes I have are when my students go forward and they believe against all odds, they will find the path that is best for them.
Beautiful.
Yeah, in my case, I've said it before like a broken record, but I find it important every time. Finishing activates opportunity. When you finish a project, and you're talking to the master of not finishing. I spent decades not finishing stuff. But I have found when you finish stuff and deliver to market, it's not enough to finish it and have it sit in the portfolio. You must finish it. It must be manufactured into a product, then delivered. The more you do it, if your quality rises and you continue on that path, finishing things, you begin to develop a reputation of finishing. And then from there, you build an audience who expects your work because you always finish. And I find that if you have a goal, this book tour is exhibit A of it, is that there are times you go, man, I wish we could do this on this tour. You go in not knowing how you're going to get to the next step. But when you go to the next step, and then you get to the step after that, and then you get to the step after that, what begins to happen is that other people are seeing what you're doing. The opportunities that you never would have dreamed would have come about, suddenly come about. You know what I mean? I never would have been able to predict that in May that we would have been invited to the hip hop panel at San Diego Comic-Con, which is one of the biggest things there. But that happened because we finished. It put me in the hospital for a second. I got to learn how to take care of myself better. But we finished, and because you finish, people understand. That's why we're in Forbes magazine. That's why we've been featured on CBS News. That's why those things happen. And I say that to your viewers and listeners is because it only is supposed to look glamorous to your viewers and your readers. As soon as you get past that, everything is just work. It's all work. As long as you understand that, and as Venus Williams said, most people don't understand that when you pay the price for something, the world opens up to you.
The price.
What was it, Chris, that you always quote this particular writer, says it's all about butts and chairs?
Oh, that's Richard Price told me that one time. Yeah. He said it comes down to butt and chair. Clockers. Do the work. Yes. Yep. Yes. Matter of fact, he was researching clockers when he talked to me about it. And I introduced him to my brother, who was in narcotics at the time.
As an officer, as a product,
as a cop, yeah,
consumer, yeah.
And Richard Price stopped talking to me and started talking to him because it's always work. It's always work. Yeah. So there you go. We learned a lot. Yeah. I was very inspired. I haven't been out on the circuit in a while, but Tim's got me raring to go. Walter, it's been an honor. I want you to both to know that during that last bit with Tim, I went online, ordered the book. Ladies and gentlemen, it's really easy to order, and it's going to be here by Wednesday, and I'm looking forward to it. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Get yourselves The Graphic History of Hip Hop
by Tim Fielder and
so
Walter
much to
Grayson. Grayson.
That's right. There you go.
Learn my lesson this week.
There you go.
Guys, it was really wonderful. I'm going to ask, because I know Chris is not going to fight me on this. You guys come back sometime?
That would be great.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah,
then we will make that happen. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Chris, what do you normally say and ask and respectfully?
If you enjoyed this episode like I enjoyed this episode, ladies and gentlemen, smash that like and hit subscribe. And then go over and order The Graphic History of Hip Hop.
Hey, take care, everybody.
Peace.
Thank you.